Welcome to lesson 18, part 1 on the float. In this lesson we will look at what a float is and how to declare a float in Java. As you see in this image, the floating point number is represented by two types in Java, namely the float, which is a 32-bit, and the double. The float data type uses 32 bits to store a floating point number in the IEEE 754 standard format. Its range is from 1.4 times 10 to the negative 45 to 3.4 times 10 to the positive 38. Note that ranges include only magnitude. It could be a positive or negative number. All real numbers that end with F or capital F or small f are called float literals. Floats can be written both in decimal number format or scientific notation. The wrapper class for the float is a float with a capital F. Let's look at an example or examples of declaring a float. Okay, let's look at declaring floats. Yeah, I've got a small application class called main, and in its main method I've declared some floats. So what I say here, all real numbers that end with an F or F are called float literals. A float literal can be expressed as a decimal format or in its scientific notation. Here we're looking at the decimal format, and we're initializing a float. Here I'm saying, so let's see, here at the top I've got one private static field variable, which we haven't touched it. We'll look at it later on, but you'll see it's of type float F0, and because it's a field, it's automatically initialized to 0.0f. Then here I've declared and initialized a whole lot of float variables. Float not int. I've got f1 3f. You see it stops with a capital F there. It's a float variable. Here's another float variable, small f 3.3, and this one you see this one I started without a 0, just 0.25 and 0.0f. I'll run this thing now. Now the following two below give us compile errors, and these would be this ones that I've commented out, the float which has got nothing, just a point. You need either a number before or after the point, and this one here 0.333 without the F, which remember F or capital or small f's or float literals. This one is actually the default in Java, which is a double, and a double will come later on is actually 64-bit number, and it doesn't fit into a float. It's too big. And then yeah, I'm printing out to display these variables here. And then in scientific notation, yeah, I've got some examples of scientific notation. As you can see, that's your normal scientific notation, then to e to the power of 0, e to the power of -1, and so on, and I'm printing those there. And then you can look at this, and then using the wrapper class to create a float. Note that new float and new float with a string has been depreciated. You rather use the static method value of, which you'll look at as well. So we'll get a warning on these here, which I'm using the new to create an object float. You'll see when I compile it and run it, it gives me an error there. Not an error, a warning that it's been depreciated. And yeah, I'm using the value of static method of the float wrapper class. and I'm printing them out. And Java 7 provides the facility to use underscore in numeric literals like the int, byte, short, float, long, and double. Most of them we've seen already. We've seen all these. We can use any number of underscore characters between digits in a numeric literal. It helps to improve readability. Yeah, now I've got example. If the variable f20, you can see I've split them over there with an underscore, so it makes it easier to read long numbers. And I'm terminating with f, which is a float. Then I'm printing that one. And yeah, if you look down here, what I'm speaking about this one here, the var type, yeah, I'm assigning a float literal to the var type, and I'm using one of the methods. I convert the float variable to its object float to use the and I use the get class. The get class method, the float inherits from its parent java.lang.object here. What I'm doing here is to show that it's a float. I'm converting that float literal. I'm saying float dot value of, so I'm converting it to its wrapper class. I can use its methods, and then I'm using the get class method that it inherits from the object class, and I'm getting its simple name. Okay, so let's see what this does. So I'm just going to clear it because I just tried it just now, and then we can compile it just to show you. I'm going to go ls to see there is my main.java class there. So I'm just going to compile it. I've actually got the main Java class there already compiled, so I'm just going to remove that one. And if I go ls again, you see the main class is gone now. So I'm going to compile it quickly. Java main.java, and you see I'm actually getting a warning, which I told you before. It's a warning. It's not a compiler error. It's a warning, which says that the float if you use the constructor float and has been removed, and the float with has been removed. So rather use because it's been not been removed, it's been depreciated. So rather use the other variable, but the method value of. But I'm going to run it now. Java main, and there's all the results. You can see the first one there has been initialized. That would be f0, which is this one here. It's been initialized to 0.0f to 0.0, which is that one over there. And then all the others are here, as you can see, the f1, f2, f3, f4, and f5. I did print it on the same line because I didn't print it with a leading line there. So I'll fix that quickly. Let's do that. Let me just save it, and let's just run it again. It will be more java main.java quickly, and then Java main, and it should be nicely under each other. There it is. So those are those there, the first 5. They are printed it out, the print line there. And then there's the next from F8 to F13, which I used the scientific notation. So these here we was using a scientific notation. Okay, that's its print. Then the next lot, which I used the depreciated F14 constructor value. There that is. Then F16 to F19 I use the value of, and you can see there I'm using float literals, and there I'm actually using a string which will come later onto the string, but that's a string because it's in quotes. And there I'm showing the readable, making it more readable, the F20, there its output is, making it more readable for long numbers. You can use the underscore. And then to show you that the var type, the variable, which in this case gets assigned a float, it's of type float, and they have proved that the type of var is float. Here it is. I'm taking F24, creating a float object with it, and then using its methods to get its simple name, and it shows you it's a float. The object created is of type float. We've come to the end of this lesson on Java's float primitive type. We looked at various ways of declaring a float variable in Java. I hope you enjoyed this lesson, learned something from it, and please don't forget to press the subscribe and notify button. I've also got a Facebook page related to this channel. You are welcome to join my Adventure channel where I share photos and videos of various activities. Until we meet again in our next lesson, I wish you well and happy coding.
Xin chào các bạn.